In the next 10 seconds, you're about to think a sentence. For most people, that sentence arrives with a voice attached to it, their own voice, speaking it inside their skull. For a surprising number of people, it doesn't. There's no voice at all, just the thought, arriving silently. Most people are. That voice narrates your whole life. It rehearses what you're about to say. It replays arguments you lost. It reads your grocery list back to you in the store. But here's the part almost nobody knows. A huge number of people don't have that voice at all. Not just less of it. None of it. Ever. They don't hear themselves think. They just think. And until very recently, most of them had no idea they were different. In 2020, a simple online poll on this exact question went viral. Millions of people discovered, in real time, that a large portion of the population lives with a completely different mental experience than they assumed everyone shared. Comment sections filled with people having a small identity crisis in both directions. Some couldn't believe others narrated every waking thought. Others couldn't believe some people never did. So what's actually happening inside a mind with no inner voice? And what does that voice even do for the rest of us? The answer touches memory, reading, mental health, and what it even means to think in the first place. Let's start with how we found out this gap existed at all. For decades, psychologists mostly assumed inner speech was universal. You think in words, obviously, because that's what thinking feels like. Then researcher Russell Hurlburt started a method called descriptive experience sampling. He gave people a small beeper. It buzzed randomly throughout the day. The moment it beeped, they wrote down exactly what was happening in their mind. Right then, no editing. What he found broke the assumption completely. Some people's minds were narrating in full sentences most of the time. Others almost never had words at all. Just images, feelings, abstract impressions with no sentence attached. Hurlburt called people in that second group something specific. They weren't confused. They weren't unaware. Their thoughts simply weren't dressed in language most of the time. More recent research has given this a name. Researchers now sometimes call it a near total absence of inner speech. It isn't rare and it isn't broken. It's just a different cognitive style, sitting quietly at one end of a wide spectrum. To understand why some people have it and some don't, you have to go back to how the voice is built in childhood. Watch a 4-year-old playing alone. They talk, out loud, constantly, narrating their toys, coaching themselves through a puzzle, arguing with an imaginary friend. Psychologist Lev Vygotsky studied this and proposed something radical for his time. That out-loud chatter isn't meaningless background noise. It's thinking, happening in audible form, because the child hasn't learned to do it silently yet. Over the next few years, that speech doesn't disappear. It goes underground. The lips stop moving mostly. The muscles in your throat still twitch faintly when you think in words, a leftover of that childhood habit, folded inward. For most people, that folding in process fully installs an inner narrator by around age 7. But the installation isn't identical in every brain. Some children internalize it heavily. Some barely internalize it at all, and keep thinking largely in images, sensations, and patterns instead. Neither one is a malfunction. They're just different settings on the same machine. Researchers have even measured this folding in process directly. Using tiny sensors on the throat, they've picked up faint muscle activity when people think in words, the same muscles used for speaking, firing at a fraction of their normal strength. The mechanics of talking never fully switched off. They just got quiet enough that most people stopped noticing them. So if you don't have that narrator, what fills the space? People who report no inner voice consistently describe something hard to translate into language, which is a little ironic. They describe thinking in bursts of understanding. A problem resolves itself as a shape, a feeling of rightness, before any sentence would even be needed to explain it. Some highly successful engineers and mathematicians have described exactly this. The solution arrives whole, and only afterward do they translate it into words so other people can follow along. This matters because it means language isn't thought itself. Language is more like an export format, a way of packaging thought so it can leave your skull and enter someone else's. People without an inner voice aren't missing thoughts. They're just running a version of the mind that skips the subtitles. For people who do have a strong inner voice, it's doing more work than most realize. It's how you hold a phone number in your head for 10 seconds, silently repeating it in your own voice. It's how you proofread your own writing, sounding out each sentence internally before you send it. It's how you rehearse a hard conversation before you have it, running the script in advance. But that same narrator has a darker side. It's also the voice behind rumination. Replaying an embarrassing moment on a loop at 2 a.m., rehearsing an argument that already ended, except this time you win it, over and over, uselessly. This is part of why some meditation traditions spend years training people to quiet that inner voice. Not to erase thought, but to loosen thought's grip on language, at least for a few minutes at a time. People who already live with less inner narration may be starting from a place many meditators spend a decade trying to reach. There's a strange trade-off hiding in all of this. The same narrator that helps you plan, rehearse, and remember is also the one that won't let a bad memory rest. People who report little to no inner speech tend to describe less of that looping replay, less rehearsal of the good, but also less torment from the bad. So which is better? Neither. That's the wrong question entirely. The inner voice isn't the thing doing your thinking. It's closer to a tool your brain built, sometime around age 7, to help package thought into a shareable form. Some brains lean on that tool constantly. Some barely touch it and think in shapes and instinct instead. If you've spent your whole life assuming everyone hears a voice like yours, you now know that isn't true. And if you've spent your whole life wondering why you don't hear one, you now know you were never broken. You were simply thinking in a format nobody had bothered to name yet. The voice in your head was never you. It was just one way your mind learned to talk to itself.